The Committee on Parole is called back to order. Our next case is Mr. Norman Dozier. Mr. Dozier, if you would please give us your full name and DOC number.
Yes, sir. My name is Norman F. Dozier Jr. My DOC number is 387320.
Mr. Dozier, I'd like to explain our process to you. First, I'm going to read some information into the record, and the board is going to conduct a parole interview with you. At the appropriate time, we will allow those persons who've indicated they wish to have input to speak at that time. Those persons who here speak on your behalf, Mr. Kerry Myers with the Louisiana Parole Project, also here but not speaking, or Elise Hartz, your fiance, Ronald Olivier, a friend, and Justin Singleton, a friend. Additionally, we have Bridget Dozier, Norman Dozier, and also in opposition, we have speaking today Mr. Brian Greenwood, who is the grandson of the victim. Ms. Nell Wilson Albritton, who is also here in person, and Robin Maru, I'm sorry if I mispronounced Morrow. Okay. I see where it ought to be Morrow, but it's spelled a little differently on my sheet. So, okay, Morrow. In addition, we have present but not speaking Claire Wilson, Marilyn Scallon, Melissa Guillory, and Don Wilson. At the end, you'll be allowed to make a brief statement before the board votes. Do you understand our process, sir?
Yes, sir.
This is the matter of Norman F. Dozier, DOC number 387320, date of birth August the 26th of 1971. He's classified as a first felony offender. He has a parole eligibility date of August the 1st of 2021. So adjusted good time of July 18th of 2044. Full term date of January the 13th of 2095. He was originally sentenced to life imprisonment for second degree murder. That sentence was commuted to 99 years on October the 20th of 2022 with immediate parole eligibility. Mr. Dozier, does that sound all accurate?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dozier, your case was assigned to me, so I will begin our interview process. Mr. Dozier, how old are you, sir?
I'm 51, sir.
And how long have you been in prison?
27 years and 3 months, sir.
Tell me a little bit about your educational background, Mr. Dozier.
Yes, sir. I graduated from Peabody Magnet High School in Alexandria. And I did a little bit of college at LSUA in Alexandria.
And how old were you at the time of this offense?
I was 24 years old, sir.
Tell me about Norman Dozier at 24 years old. What were you doing? Were you working?
No, sir. I was in a horrible place, a place of darkness, and I was selling drugs, sir.
Were you using drugs?
Sir, I used to smoke weed periodically, and I would take Vicodins every now and then.
And when did you start smoking weed?
Probably at about the age of 16.
How about alcohol? Did you drink?
Yes, periodically, sir.
When you say periodically, how often?
A lot of times on weekends or any type of celebrations.
Do drugs or alcohol play any part in this crime?
I would have to say yes, sir.
Tell me how.
The influences, I don't want to sound religious, but the influences are demonic and they bring you in a darker place even that you're in. And that's one of the things that brought me in a darker place, using those type of substances at that age.
Were you using drugs on this particular day?
Not at that particular day, sir.
How often were you smoking weed during this period of time?
Not at that particular time, but when I was younger.
So you're saying the effects of the drugs early on had something to do with this, but you weren't on drugs at that time?
No, sir.
How often were you using drugs during that time? When was the last time you had used any drugs before this killing?
Maybe probably the weekend prior, I probably drunk some, because I used to drink periodically. So probably a weekend before that.
So tell me what happened. Explain to me in your own words. And we've got police reports, we've got all of that. I want you to tell me what it is that you did, what your role was, and what happened.
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking, sir. On the night of January the 10th, 1996, a co-defendant owed me money, and I orchestrated a robbery. And as the co-defendant told me what needed to be done, I let
you say co-defendant owed you money. Who owed you the money?
Vicky Coco.
All right. That's the woman who was involved in this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead. Then what happened?
And at that time, she mentioned that I would need to cohort with her in a robbery. And I let her know that I wasn't going to do that. However, I knew somebody that would. And
so you weren't willing to commit the robbery, but you were willing to get someone else to commit the robbery on your behalf.
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, and we left the house that we were at, and we got the guy.
Let me stop you for a little bit. Tell me your reasoning. Why were you not willing to do it, but you were willing to let someone else do it?
I would have to say, as looking at hindsight, cowardly. I would have to say that, sir.
Okay, go ahead. Continue. What happened next?
Okay, we left to go get the guy, my other co-defendant, and I shared with him as I began to formulate the robbery. And we all got in the truck and we went on January the 10th to Mr. Clarence Roband's house. And Vicky Coco went in the house and knocked on the door. And my other co-defendant went in also. And what took place. The man was murdered, and it was
not armed with anything.
No, sir, we didn't have anything on us, but my co-defendant looked in the back of the truck and saw a four-way jack.
So at least one of you armed yourself with a four-way lug wrench jack when you went inside the place.
Yes, sir.
Obviously to be used, if necessary, to get whatever it is y'all were trying to get.
Yes, sir.
Continue.
Okay, and as my co-defendant went right, Vicky Coco went left, and my co-defendant stayed in the house for probably about 20 seconds and came running out with Vicky Coco, and we got back in the truck and we went back to Marksville, Louisiana. And I would have to take full responsibility, sir, because had I not got my other co-defendant, this would have never happened.
You have learned what happened to the victim in this case. He was brutally murdered, wasn't he?
Yes, sir.
How did you learn that? When did you figure that out?
I figured that out when the newspaper and the news came on that he was brutally murdered.
What did you do after y'all left there? Where did you go?
We went to Marksville, Louisiana, to the house of Ray Brackens. I think on Martin Luther King Street, if I'm not mistaken.
Didn't someone send Miss Coco back in, get money and to get some items out of the house?
Not as my recollect. I can't recollect that she went back to the house.
Did y'all steal anything?
No, sir.
So as far as you know, it was just a murder and no one got anything as a result of your going there to rob.
Yes, sir. But to my recollection, nothing was taken.
And how did you get ultimately caught?
On January the 13th, me and my fiance and my, which is my son right here, he was 2 years old, he's 30 right now. We were at our house and the Alexander police officers, task force came to the house. And they arrested me and they brought me back, they brought me to Rapides Parish Jail, and then from there they brought me to Marksville Jail. January the 13th, 1996.
You go to trial? Did you plead guilty?
No, sir. I went to trial, but we went to court. I didn't plead guilty. I got found guilty of second-degree murder.
As you look back on what you did, what motivated you to, you say you weren't drinking or you weren't on drugs or anything. What motivated you to get these several people to go over there and rob the victims?
Mr. Marabella, all I can see, as a pastor now, is just pure evil. I was living in a dark place, and my mindset was twisted, which caused me to make horrible decisions at that time. And I was just motivated by just being in darkness, sir.
Let's talk a little bit about what you've accomplished while you've been in prison. What are some of the programs that you think have been the most helpful to you while you've been in prison?
Number one, I would have to say the trauma class that I'm in right now. It's very, very powerful. I'm thinking that Warden Amble might have instituted it in, but it's taught by Ronald Marshall, and it's revolutionizing Angola, and it's showing the trauma that was caused and what also causes stress and causes all kind of other things to go on in you, and how to release that and relieve that.
So tell me about how that's affected you.
Oh, it's affected me like this, several ways, sir. One of the things that Ronald Marshall taught us in this trauma class and teaching us is how to be a trauma-informed person, which they call TIP. And also ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences. We begin to learn our ACEs, we begin to understand how those things that we grew up with affected us, and it causes us to be able to deal with that and begin to be better people.
You indicated that you did drugs, you drank a little bit, took some pills. Have you taken any programs or anything that you've been while you've been in prison that has given you some insight on how to avoid that in the future?
Yes, sir. Thanks for asking, Mr. Marabella. I've taken substance abuse classes. I not only take it, I teach Celebrate Recovery as a social mentor here in Angola, which is a substance abuse class. And I've also been blessed by God's grace to create a curriculum called Recovery by Grace, which is a substance abuse curriculum that God allowed me to create right here, that we're teaching here, and that several men here in Angola are being blessed and being set free from addiction. And I'm also a part of New Men's Ministry, by orchestrated by Gard Newman. Those are just a few of the things that I've done concerning substance abuse.
Tell me what you teach in that program. Tell me what you're teaching to the other inmates, or what you're trying to instill in them.
Okay, I'm teaching it. First of all, the curriculum that I teach, Recovery by Grace, it's faith-based, and it's Christian orientated, and I make it known to them. You know, everybody's on drugs or in bondage, and they're looking for a high, and they're constantly chasing that high. But the most high is the high that they're looking for, that everyone has a hole in their heart that needs to be filled by the Most High. And as I begin to show them these principles and begin to show them my life, how I was once in darkness at a young age, and how God has transformed me from a seller of dope into a giver of hope, that I'm able to give them hope when they begin to see my life.
Mr. Dozier, you were in the Army, is that right?
Yes, sir.
You're a Vietnam vet?
Yes, sir. No, not a Vietnam vet, sir. No, so my dad was a Vietnam vet.
Oh, dad was Vietnam.
I wasn't even born in Vietnam. I was born in 1971.
Oh, you were in the United States Army. Did you get
Yes, sir.
honorable discharge?
Yes, sir.
How long were you in the Army?
I was in the Army 2 years, sir.
Now, you're a mentor for the reentry court program?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that.
Yes, thanks for asking, sir. I think that the reentry program is the greatest program on the planet. And the reason why I say that, because the mentors that I work with are what you would call the cream of the crop here in Angola. It's handpicked guys that have, most of them are Bible college graduates or pastors. And they have to be these type of guys, because we're dealing with young men's lives. And we want to mold these young men's lives, because I have 2 grandkids, and we want to have these guys ready to go and be around our grandkids and be a positive influence. And we get some guys that are rough around the edges. I've been a social mentor for 12 years here in Angola, and we've seen hundreds of guys, and we've seen hundreds of success stories that guys are doing extremely well and have broken the addiction cycle and broken the generational curses that they were bound by. And they're out there living outstanding lives and living for God now.
Dozier, I noticed that you're involved in something called Tyro Leadership. Explain that to me. What is that?
Yes, sure. That's a class taught by the Torina family. The Torina family was an ex-con, but he's out there doing things that I would like to do, and he's going around the nation representing God, and he's teaching men how to be leaders and teaching men how to own up and man up into the things that they need to be doing and being people of purpose. He teaches us how to be men with missions, you know, and to stand firm in the things that are right.
Talk a little bit about your disciplinary record. You've had 7 write-ups since you've been there. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Which is an excellent record. Your last one was in 2015. What was that for? You remember?
Yes, sir. Thanks for asking, sir. I definitely do remember. In 2015, I had a TB test, And in that TB test, well, this is what it is. We get a prick on our arm on a Wednesday, and we have to come back Friday to get it checked. And being with the mentees, I forgot, my fault, forgot. And I did not get my TB test checked, and I got wrote up for that, sir.
Tell me what's your transition plan. If you were to get positive votes today to release you, where would you be going?
Thanks for asking, sir. One of the other greatest programs on the planet, I would have to say, would be the Parole Project, which has an extremely success level. I would be met at the gate by Andrew Huntley and Kerry Myers, wonderful organization, and I would be able to be transitioned by them. And after the Parole Project, I'm also connected to Norris Henderson Vote. And I also have my wonderful family that's here, my 30-year-old son that's a business owner in the Alexandria area. And I have my wonderful fiance of 12 years. She's a nurse practitioner. My wonderful mother that's a minister of the gospel, and my sister's here to help me transition. But I would be living with my mother in Alexandria and working for my son.
Is that Dozier Enterprises that you had listed? That's your son?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dozier, what would you say if you had an opportunity to say something to the family?
Yes, sir.
Program.
Yes. That I'm extremely remorseful for the harming and the death of Mr. Clarence Roban, and for the pain that I've caused not only the family, but the friends of the family. And I'm deeply remorseful for what I've done. And I pray that they would see the change in me and see who God has allowed me to be. And I regret it. It is not a day in my life that I don't see what I've done, and I've hurt and changed people's lives, and shattered lives. I know that, and I'm extremely remorseful. And I just pray, that my life can be seen and forgiveness could take place, and I'm just trusting God just to comfort the family. And I just pray that everything that the pain that I've caused, that God would comfort them and strengthen us all.
Mr. Dozier, in reviewing your file, I note that you've got a lot of letters of support from a lot of prison staff over the years that you've worked with. You also have opposition from law enforcement. There's nothing you can do about that, but they are vehemently opposed to your release. Certainly, the victim's family is vehemently opposed to your release. There's nothing you can do about that. It is what it is, and I want to put that on the record. Your risk assessment is low. You have one child, is that correct? How old is you? Is that your son?
Yes, he's 30 years old.
30 years old? And you have a good relationship with him, I assume?
Awesome relationship with him.
One, what can you tell us about Mr. Dozier?
I can tell you that Mr. Dozier is one of the social mentors in reentry court. And to be a social mentor, two of the classes that y'all mentioned, Tyrone leadership is one of the prerequisites. And also we have this new one, trauma and healing. The role of the social mentor is to mentor the mentees into knowing life skills. So when they get out as a free citizen, they would know how to use their social skills to keep a job, because you can always get all kind of trades. And when you get the job, it's the social skills that you need to be able to keep the job. So he's been real good and instrumental in playing a part in our reentry court program. Other than that, I can tell you that he's exemplified rehabilitation skills and stuff, and he has been a model inmate.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
This one question.
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Dozier. Again, how are you?
I'm fine, Mr. Roche.
Now, I understand your transition plan, put you in Alexandria, Louisiana, that vicinity, right?
Yes, sir.
And how far is your residence from the place where you committed the crime?
I think it's about 30 miles, sir.
It's about 30 miles away.
Yes, sir.
Have you given thought to any other transition plan?
Yes, sir. My wife stays in Baton Rouge. Fiance, if the opportunity that is allotted, we'll be getting married in May if the opportunity is allotted.
Have you ever given any thought to setting up in Baton Rouge instead of Alexandria?
Yes, sir.
I would like to see you if and when you're released, get out of the vicinity in which the victim's family live. Simply because it is a emotional, physical, and mental stress on that family if and when you're ever released. And I think some consideration should be given to putting at least 100, 200 miles between you and that victim's family.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from your supporters. Mr. Kerry Myers.
Yes, good morning. Kerry Myers with Louisiana Parole Project, here to let the board know that Mr. Dozier is our client. We've been working with Mr. Dozier all the way through his clemency process for more than 2 years now. We have all the confidence in the world that Mr. Dozier is exactly who you see here, a very mature man, a man who has given back to his community, a man who has an amazing support system, regardless of whether he be in Baton Rouge or Alexandria. Parole Project is prepared to support him through his transition, and if it takes a little bit longer to make that transition to Baton Rouge, we're prepared to do that. We certainly, like as I said, believe in Mr. Dozier and in his capacity to be an excellent member of his community. So we'd ask this board to grant his parole today.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Now we'll hear from the opposition, Mr. Brian Greenwood. Good morning, Mr. Greenwood. If you would give us your full name and tell us what you'd like us to hear.
What was the last one?
Tell us what you'd like us to hear.
Oh, thank you. My name is Brian Greenwood. I'm the grandson of Clarence Roban. And today I would like to provide you with a little bit additional information based on our. I'm going to start with the fact of the word word, W-O-R-D. The word word means, I'm not going to go into meaning, however, words have meaning. And in meaning, they can be positive or they can be negative. People mean things, say things, but at times, you don't see the action. I heard a few things today that disturbed me, of course, because the victim is my grandfather. But in a word, there are contracts, there are covenants, there are agreements. There are promises of things that people say. Mr. Dozier mentioned something of the fact that somebody owed him. And because of the decision that he made, unintended consequences occurred. I want to tell you a little story about the same thing on our side of the room, which my mother, her sister, during the sentencing phase, said that the choices were presented to them as follows: the death penalty or life without parole. Things happen. They chose the opportunity of life without parole because of the values that they have. Words, unintended consequences have occurred because it was to them. And the reason why I'm here, not because she is deceased, is the fact that words of the unintended consequences of them giving life and not pursuing the death penalty, we're here today as unintended consequences on our side. That conversation. I want to make it known that that is what the decision of our family made at that time. I want to talk about my grandfather real briefly. The values of hard work are instilled in myself, my brother, and my cousin. I learned how to work when I was 12 years old on his farm, and the impact that he had on not only myself and my cousins and the family, but the whole community of Angola. Because you see, he provided education to everyone regarding agriculture. And he valued the value of education. And today I use a lot of the things that I learned through him. Last week would have been his 110th birthday. His death date, I purposely made my wedding date because I want to never forget that day. It was hard. I want to talk about the resident, should this occur. I hope it doesn't. You have a very hard job to do. I know you do. But the facts are these. We have a large, and to your point, sir, appreciate your comments, because we have family almost in every corner of Louisiana. And to say that 30 miles from where the murder occurred is not acceptable is of that close proximity. And looking at other places inside of Louisiana, an hour and a half drive, 2-hour drive, you draw a circle around that epicenter. We have family. So I don't know how that resident plan is going to work. Should you decide going in that direction, which I hope you consider opposite of that. The last thing is that it's hard to see on our side the facts of words, because we committed through my mother, her sisters, about doing what was right and what they felt at that time, because they were life-giving. They were all in education. They educated everyone in their classes. It's hard to see outside of words, which we have seen the action of. The final thing I'll say is this: unintended consequences. There were 4 of them, and one of my 4 young folks, probably less than 30, less than 20. I don't care. And an 82-year-old. 4 against 1. That's absurd to say that. And if there were a problem, and they were to just ask and say, "Excuse me, sir, could I borrow $20? My grandfather would have given them $20 right there to be done. That's the type of person. This is a hard decision. I'm going to tell you, I can only do what I can do. And you can only do what you can. I appreciate the responsibility and the weight on your shoulders, but I would hope that you would take into consideration the things that we have sent you to review on our side, and the things that I say, my cousins are about to say, into consideration that this may not be the right decision about letting someone go based on crime that was untaken. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Ms. Nell Wilson Albritton.
My mother was originally supposed to, feeling well this morning, so maybe give a version of her statement. My name is Nell. My mother is Claire Rodan Wilson, who is the daughter of Clarence Rodan, who you know was murdered in his home by Norman Dozier. Along with my family, I am here to oppose his parole. My grandfather was a good man. He served his daughters and his community and his whole family. His death affected us all and left his daughters frightened and sick. My grandfather was beaten to death in the course of a home invasion and armed robbery planned and perpetrated by Norman. There was no passion, there was no provocation. Papa did not or could not resist or defend himself. His defensive wing showed that he did try to shield his head from the blows. He was in his 80s, crippled from a bad hip, and weighed less than 150 pounds. The only testimony provided about the manner of Papa's murder was provided by the girl his murderers used as bait to do the intrudes of his house. He testified earlier that day she had stolen money from my grandmother. When she later purchased drugs from Dozier and told him of her theft, he planned to go back to my grandfather's house and rob. Heard him admit he was not agreeing to these drugs for this decision of this act. Concerned that he lacked the courage to kill an old man, she has admitted, he recruited a man he was confident was capable of committing a murder. Make no mistake, when these men left to go to my grandfather's home, they did so with premeditated and cold-blooded attempt to murder him. When Dozier and his associates arrived at his house, they went upstairs to look for him. Dozier and his associate Davenport overpowered my grandfather in his back. They entered his home armed with a tire iron and beat my grandfather, crushing his skull and leaving him to die in his back. We believe they planned to kill Papa, whether they got any money or not. The murder of my grandfather was a cruel and brutal act, showing no human decency or regard for the life of a man they had never met, who had done them no wrong. Based on Vicky Coco's testimony, she was the bait, Bracken was the driver, Davenport was the hitman, and Norman Dozier was the planner, the organizer, and the leader of this band. So his guilt is erased. Dozier was found guilty of second-degree murder by 12 jurors who believed that life in prison without parole was the appropriate sentence. A distinguished district court judge imposed this sentence, agreeing with the jury. 3 judges of the Third Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously affirmed the conviction in this. That means 16 people, including 4 judges, agreed that Dozier was guilty of a brutal and premeditated murder and should be penalized for that crime by life in prison without parole. As I said, this is not a spur of the moment heat of passion or emotionally charged. It was a cold-blooded, pre-planned, and in our opinion, intentional execution. These men, led by Norman Dozier, calmly, coolly, and without provocation, beat an 83-year-old to death. This was a barbaric act. Now he is asking for mercy and compassion he never showed my grandfather. He talked about his work in recovery, his work dealing with trauma, and the influences of people on his behavior. But prior to being considered for commutation of his sentence, and prior to this parole hearing, he did not avail himself of opportunities to take accountability to himself and to my family for what he had done. Prison is intended as a punishment, which in this case is well deserved. But it also serves to keep people like Dozier away from us and other innocent civilians. Cousin Missy reminds us that the best foreteller of the future is history. And history tells us that Norman Dozier could murder when convenience or greed requires it. Because he showed no regard for human life or human decency. If Norman Dozier gets out of prison and finds himself in a similar circumstance, we believe that he will kill again, just as he killed Michael. I understand that Norman Dozier has a family who want him home. I'm sorry that they have had to go through this. But my family believes that Norman Dozier is a cold-blooded murderer and needs to stay right where he is for the rest of his life. We respectfully ask that the board deny his application.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Now we'll hear from Robin Moore.
Morning. I'm Robin Morrow. I'm the grandson of Clarence Roban. I'll tell you a little bit about him. I'm the eldest of the grandchildren, and he was a role model to me. It kind of begins with his story. His story is a young boy coming up in a large family, and the only one of 8 that goes to college. It's a scholarship. Graduates from LSU with honors, goes to a Balls parish, becomes an agriculture teacher. Marries his wife, Emma, which is a teacher also. She's a teacher also. They teach in Hesmer and they raise a family of 4 girls. They educate those girls who all become teachers. And he has a big impact on their lives. Also in his community, he has a big impact. Nobody talked about his church today, his Catholic church, that in 1959, he was on the building committee to build a new church at St. Alphonsus in Heston. I'm inspired by him because I became an ag teacher also. I retired after 32 and a half years of teaching ag, and I'm very blessed to have had him as a mentor. I'm the young man that found him sitting on that commode, having been hit by a tire tube. I'm the young man that testified in the 4 trials that went on and was devastated by his loss. See, because I had lost my wife 2 years before that with breast cancer, and she had left me with 2 young kids. This was a sad way to take away his life. It was a cowardly way to take his life. He had done so much for us and for the community and the people all around us that I hated to see the way he died. My parents, along with my aunts and my uncles, talked a lot about this and what went on. And as the trials occurred, my mother and her sisters asked for life in prison instead of a death penalty. We thought life in prison meant life. Today, we're finding out that maybe something different. And back at that point in time, I told them, you better be very cautious of what you allow to happen. But because of the kind of people they were, because of the kind of compassion they had, and the kind of compassionate person he was, they said, we'll go with the life in prison sentence. So I want to say today that I respect the job that you do up there, and I hope that you would continue to keep Mr. Dozier incarcerated. I know he's done rehabilitation and done all kinds of things. We all make mistakes. We have to pay for our mistakes. And we thought it was so we're going to get life in prison. So I thank you for your time and your effort.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morrow. We appreciate your comments. Mr. Dozier, is there anything you'd like to say before we vote?
Yes, sir. That I'm deeply remorseful for the harming and the death of Mr. Clarence Roban and for the pain that I caused the family and friends. And that it was deep remorse that compelled me to spend every waking moment of my life allowing God to work on me from the inside out, that I might become a person of purpose, that I'm not that selfish, inconsiderate, immature 24-year-old that was a part of the problem, that I've become a selfless, considerate, mature man of God that's a part of the solution. And if given the opportunity to make parole, I would make this honorable board, my wonderful family, and my community very, very proud. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
All right. Mr. Dozier, ladies and gentlemen present today, I do appreciate the courage that it's taken for you to come here and talk with us. And I hear your pain. I can't say that I can really understand it. I feel your pain. I know what you've gone through. We all have different roles in the criminal justice system. Law enforcement has a particular role. Defense lawyers, prosecutors have a particular role. The judge has a particular role. Legislature has a particular role. And the pardon parole board has a particular role. And while we are to consider the horrible facts of this case, crime that this man has committed, this board's responsibility and obligation is to look and see who he is today in comparison in light of all of the factors that we take into account. And in looking at Mr. Dozier and the things that he's been able to accomplish in the last 27 years in prison, he has a good disciplinary record. He's got excellent comments by the warden, prison staff, of the things that he's been able to accomplish while he's been there. He is a mentor to other prisoners in prison. He has established a program that helps prisoners there. He's done a lot of community service work while he's been there. He's got an excellent transition plan. The things that this board needs to look at to determine whether or not he has earned through his work in prison a chance at parole. Having looked at all of those factors, my vote today would be to grant his parole to the Louisiana Parole Project, condition that he have no contact whatsoever with the victims, to get a substance abuse evaluation or whatever treatment is recommended, 6 hours of community service work per month, and that he be on a curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. Daily. That would be my vote. I'm only one of 3 votes. Ms. Jackson?
I'm really torn. These cases are always hard. Always hard. I was a criminal court judge for 28 years. I've only been on this board since 2000. But I can tell you that the decisions that I've had to make on this board are more difficult than any decision I've ever had to make as a judge. And even had to impose a pronouncement of death sentence on someone. So don't take this process lightly enough to know that this is a hard day for the family. It always is. But previously, this board reviewed Mr. Doe's case and made a recommendation to the governor that you received a commutation. That request went to the governor's office, the governor and the staff reviewed it very carefully, and they don't always accept this board's recommendation. There have been times when the governor has declined to grant commutation. But in this case, the governor and the staff came to the conclusion that Mr. Dozier had demonstrated enough by his actions over the last 27 years, they believe that he was a suitable candidate for commutation. And so I was on the panel that recommended commutation. And there is nothing that's happened in the interim that would change the position the board took when Mr. Dozier first appeared for his commutation. So based on the work Mr. Dozier has done over the last 27 plus years, the comments from prison and the service that he's rendered to others, my vote likewise would be to parole.
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dozier,
Yes, sir.
I sat on your pardon hearing, and as an old man, I don't remember exactly how I voted. But today, the overwhelming expressed opposition from the victim's family, and as Mr. Bradbourne has stated, each and every one of us have a different function. And I have a different function on this board. I am the victim's advocate. I am the person who keeps the victim in the process. And the victim plays a very, very important part in this process. And the victim's family plays an even more important part of this process. And I have an obligation when I see this much express opposition from the DA's office, from law enforcement, and from the victim's family. The nature of the crime that was committed only 27 years ago. My vote is to deny your request this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Motion. 2 out of 3. If 2 votes out of 3, which Mr. Dozier, you've received 2 of 3 votes to grant your parole under our rules and guidelines. Your parole has been granted today. Good luck to you.
Thank you, sir. Glory to God.
Sure. I am Bill Wilson's father, and these are all my. It appears to me what you're going to do when you got here. Why put my family through all this? If you already knew?
Well, that is not happening, sir. We do review these files before, we prepare them in advance. But we often come in here believing one thing when we read reports, and we change our mind when we hear people.
Thank you.
We certainly are prepared.
Thank
We
you for
certainly
your time.
didn't come in here with preconceived
We
notions.
appreciate your time. Very much.
So. Board that Angola.
I guess.
Well, down in the very water. They're down there, so they're actually burying the family plot on top of the daddy.
So go to the area, even on the way down there. They got the hole dug, they got the casket right there. And, all the final words are being said, but everybody's still kind of milling around and everything.
I mean,
Okay.
it was just,
And so the wife, she's still around or whatever, and I see her son-in-law, and I see kind of what's going on, and they're trying to lift this casket down in the hole, and it's like this. And I see them go get a 2x4. And this guy over there, he's cranking on the handles on the side.
I was just seeing if we were going to get a hot mic. So before I jump in there, and there's something about that empty chair. The family at the end, what he said was, why did he have us come out here if it was just predetermined? And he's right about that. You're putting the family through all of that drama, and I'm not sure. Now remember, this was so he had life without the possibility for parole. He had a commutation hearing, which took place on July 28th, 2021. The governor approved it, I believe, August 20th, 2022. So once he had his hearing, his life sentence commuted, he then has now this parole hearing, which I have always said is more or less procedural, which is exactly what the family just said. Why are you even have us go through this if you've made up your mind already? And it's a really good point. It's like, I'm not aware of any sentence that's been commuted that has then been denied. I think someone may have sent me one, but I don't recall actually seeing it. Someone may have notified me of it. And the only way that I know that can happen is if there's if they have a series of write-ups, or even just maybe a bad write-up in the time that they're waiting. And even the judge, Mr. Marabella and Ms. Jackson basically said, hey, because we passed, and then the governor signed off on it. And I don't know, I can't see where the governor elects the parole board members. The parole board members make a recommendation for someone to get a commutation. The governor goes and gets it and signs it. Do you really think that after the governor then signs it, that they're going to deny someone unless there is some really, really, really powerful reason to do it? And in that sense, the family is right. But I don't know what if there's a better answer. And by the way, when Mr. O'Shea said, I'm an old man, I don't remember, Richard did share with me some information on this case, and I'll share with you now. Here's the information, and we know for certain that Mr. O'Shea voted, if he was there, that he did vote to commute, because it's right here on the docket. Norman Francis Dozier. Here it is. So he was granted 5-0. So all 5 judges granted for the commutation, which just goes to show, in my opinion, that was all a song and dance by Mr. O'Shea. I mean, Mr. O'Shea knew, and if you look back at the hearing, you can actually see him talking to someone outside while Miss Jackson is giving her speech. He's talking to someone, and I believe he was asking to confirm that if a two yes, 1 no, if he would get approved. So Mr. O'Shea was denying him just for the victims, but it was completely two-faced, because he had approved him for the commutation. And if he had not approved him for the commutation, It still could have gone to the governor, but the governor might not have signed it off if he doesn't see unanimous. So a little bit two-faced there, Mr. O'Shea. Now, Mr. O'Shea's defense, it could be that he wasn't doing it as two-faced. He was doing it as, just a way to have respect for the family. But I also believe that Mr. O'Shea, saying he was an old man, he doesn't remember. Come on. I bet you he had it on his record somewhere. But okay. If we want to get over that, I like Mr. O'Shea so much, I don't want to get angry at him, but it could be easy for me to get pissed off. Now, maybe it's one of the situations where dishonesty is okay if it's supposed to make a family feel better. Now, here's the court information. There's a lot of kind of not great details on this case in terms of how they knew the defendant, and it was nice that the board didn't make him go, well, I guess, well, here it is. So facts. In the late hours of January 9th, 1996, the defendant and his 3 co-defendants went to the home of the victim, who was 82 years old. Vicky Coco knew the victim and had visited his home on prior occasions. On these occasions, Coco alleged that allegedly would go to the victims with another female. While the other woman allowed the victim to fondle her, Miss Coco would enter the bedroom and steal. So this is how the 2 women knew him. Miss Coco admitted during her testimony that she had been an addict and then supported her habit through prostitution and theft. During the early afternoons of January 9, 1966, Miss Coco went to the victim's home with Betty while Miss Dizelles kept the victim occupied, and Miss Coco went to the bedroom and took $900 from his shirt pocket. Miss Coco and Miss Dizelles shared the money. Later that day, Miss Coco used her portion of the money to purchase crack cocaine from the defendant at the home of Clinton Ray Brackens. Coco purchased the cocaine from the defendant several times during the day. When the defendant and Mr. Brackens learned that Miss Coco had stolen the money she was using from Mr. Robin, they decided to take Miss Coco back to the victim's home in order to go steal more money. The defendant and Brackens allegedly plotted to knock the victim, out during the course of the robbery. However, neither of the men wanted to actually do the knocking out. According to Miss Coco's testimony, the defendant stated he knew a man who would knock the victim out. This man is 82, and as you heard, in poor health. And it's like, you don't even need to knock him out. You literally could have just sat there and done whatever you wanted probably without even tying him up. You could have just threatened to tie him up. It's so crazy. Thereafter, the 3 drove to Pineville and picked up Winfred Davenport Jr., who was advised of the plan and allegedly agreed to knock him out. The foursome then proceeded to the victim's house. When they reached the victim's house, Mr. Coco got out of the vehicle. She testified that she saw co-defendant Davenport obtain a tire tool from the vehicle, because that's really necessary. Then walked to the victim's bedroom window and knocked on it. Soon thereafter, Mr. Robin opened the door and allowed Miss Coco to enter the house. Mr. Robin allegedly told Miss Coco to go upstairs and that he would join her shortly. Coco went to the bedroom to look for more money, but found none. Maybe because he just stole all of it. Thereafter, Miss Coco heard Mr. Robin shout, oh no. Oh, God. She ran through the hallway and saw the defendant, Mr. Davenport, standing in the bathroom, but she did not see the victim. She ran out of the house. Thereafter, the 4 co-defendants left Mr. Robinson's house and returned to Mr. Bracken's house. On January 6, 1996, Robin was found dead in his bathroom. He'd been struck on the head with an object and died from his injuries. That was January 10th that he was found dead. They went into the house on January 9th, so it was a day later. I'll drop the link of this in the description. It's just such a useless, such a senseless crime. It's like literally you could have just gone in there. You could have just continued stealing without being violent. You could have gone in there and just there's so many things if you really wanted the money, but to go take a tire iron and then smash him in the head, it's like it's just it is so senseless. Now they're saying Norman Francis Dozier was not the one to commit the act. He's not the one that wielded the weapon. He served, I think, 28 years now? 27, 28 years. The you know the bottom line is that where it becomes confusing for me is that we do see people that have actually committed the crime. They were the one that wielded the weapon. They get 25 years to life, but they get parole eligibility at 25. He got convicted, got life without parole, got it commuted, and he, the question goes to where do you want, as far as like the victim said, it's a deal's a deal, an agreement's an agreement. And that's true. And if you ever want to have the argument about the death penalty with someone, and someone says, why do we have to be so vindictive or bloodthirsty? Why give someone the death penalty? It's so expensive. It's actually cheaper to give them life. This is the argument. The argument is that life does not mean life. And a lot can happen over the years with the changing system and changing just the way things work. So this is, in my opinion, the most valid argument anyone can have about if they're having that argument with someone about why give someone death. And it would be because they may be free one day and they may be moving into a home 30 miles from where you live or closer. And that's the counter argument. Now, without hearing the victim speak, I would be like, he deserves to be out. He didn't wield a weapon. He was young. He went there for a robbery with the expectations to knock an old man out, but not to do more than that. And he's changed his life in prison. He served 28 years. I thought it was a good interview. I thought that, things that he said, it wasn't the typical, crap that you hear. It did seem to be thought out. It seemed to be genuine. It seemed to be authentic. And the point of this whole system is that you punish, rehabilitate, and to protect the citizens. And I don't think he's a danger to society. He's been punished, and he's rehabilitated. And they say that a sentence shouldn't be held if it's exclusively for the because of the objection of the victim. But as always, I love to hear your thoughts on this. With that, I'll let you go.